Few creatures of the night have captured our imagination like vampires. What explains our enduring fascination with vampires?
Hello YouTube and all of its splendor. Beast Rider 9 is here again. I apologize for my voice. I seem to have caught a cold. And so I'll sound a bit weird for this. But anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about the immensely popular book and movie series known as Twilight. Now, everyone seems to have a pretty strong opinion on Twilight. Most common, there are two ends of the spectrum. Those who worship Twilight to the point of it's become its own god, and those who hate Twilight and act as if it's the worst thing since the Holocaust. However, I exist in the one in the middle. People who just really don't care about Twilight. My reason is quite simple. Twilight is bad. That is true. It's poorly written. Characters are as one-dimensional as hell. The main cast is boring. So on and so forth. But I can admit to you that the series can be a lot worse than it was as we know it. First, I would like to speak to those who like Twilight and give my opinion on why I think it is a bad book/movie. Number one, Edward is an asshole. If I recall, in one of the books, and yes, I have read the entire series, didn't click for me, when the character, female Bella, tries to go see the werewolf Jacob, Edward literally tears out her car starter, the ignition, I believe, so that she can't. How overbearing do you have to be where you won't even let your girlfriend go see another boy she might be potentially interested in? It's, like I said, he's an asshole. He's, other than that, he's very one-dimensional. Not much character is developed with him over the course of any of them, other than he's a tortured soul who wishes to die but can't. Dude, you're a fucking vampire. Another reason is, this is dealing with the books, these stories are badly written. There are words in there that I'm not even sure if they are to be in context, or even if they are words. Now I'm not going to point anything out, so I'm just, because I'm not entirely sure most of this book. I haven't memorized it to a T, and I didn't even want to read them again. The movies, well, the first two, in all honesty, were boring. The third one I actually had, it wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible. Pretty much that. But still, they're working with shitty material, so it wasn't that good either. Other than that, I see that one thing I have a problem with the book, well, I don't really have a problem with it, but everyone I know says this is the main reason they hate the book. The vampires sparkle. Now, when I actually start giving prose to the Twilight book of why it's not completely terrible, I'll say why this doesn't bother me as much as it does anyone else. Now, in conclusion, yes, the books are bad. Badly written, characters, etc., etc. I told you all this before at the beginning. But, now we're going to move on to the second part, where I speak to you of how the book is not irredeemable. First off, like I said, the sparkling vampires. Okay, here we go. Now, the main complaint, of course, as I said, is the vampires in the Twilight series sparkle when in direct sunlight. Well, for those of you who say that vampires don't sparkle, you're sort of right, but the vampire has been, the legend of the vampire has been with humankind since the beginning of recorded time. And there are many different alliterations of vampires throughout history. I wrote 2 down that I wish to tell you about. Number 1 is a West African vampire, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, but it says Obeafo. The Obeafo, like I said, West African vampire. Let's see. The Obeafo, during the times of night, its armpits and anus emit a phosphorescent light. Okay. In your opinion, and be honest with me, what's worse? The fact that vampires sparkle like diamonds or some weird cake, one of those weird cake commercials, or a vampire who stinks so bad that his armpits and his asshole glows a fucking spotlight. Yeah, sparkling doesn't bother me. The second one, and this is actually just to show you exactly how diverse the vampire myth can be, a Sigbin, a Philippine vampire. It sucks the blood from victims through their shadows. Its head is lowered between its legs, and it walks backwards. It says here that it vaguely resembles a hornless goat. So the legend of the vampire varies. Sometimes they're not even humanoid at all. Another redeemable thing of the Twilight book are the secondary characters. These are characters that actually, in better hands, could have been very interesting, even with the sparkling part. Bella's father, I'm sorry, but I cannot recall his name. Billy, I think. Through the course of the novels, as well as the movies, he has to deal with some pretty weird shit throughout him. It's, kind of... Well, okay. His daughter is dating a vampire. A werewolf, or not so much a werewolf, really, I'll see if I get on that later, wants to also date her. Let's see what else. Towards the, spoiler, in the last novel, he figures out that Jacob and his entire pack are werewolves. He's got to put up with some shit, and he seems, the way he takes it, it's actually quite humorous, in my opinion. Another thing about the secondary characters deals with the characters of Carlisle, Jasper, Alice, and I believe Rosalie, the vampires on the other side of the Cullen Coven, or whatever you want to call it. I actually like Carlisle. The idea of him growing up and his father hunted quote-unquote witches, or vampires, I'm not sure, and he eventually becomes one. He becomes something that he was that he grew up to hate. And after he becomes one, he actually tries and succeeds, beyond succeeds, to become actually a very decent human being. And yes, I am going to use human being. He becomes a surgeon, and despite the fact of being a vampire, he's able to handle the scent of human blood without going into a bloody rage. Commendable, but as I said, this character I really wish, and the other characters I'm going to mention, should have been in better hands. Next we have Alice. The reason I actually like Alice is, and these other characters, are their backstory. Alice, before or after she became a vampire, she was condemned to a mental asylum, where she experienced her visions before or after, or during the time where she became a vampire, as I said. And for someone who's been in a mental asylum, she's actually kind of chipper throughout the series, if you know what I'm saying. Very chipper indeed. I know. It's been crazy. It always struck me as odd that once you figure out her backstory, it's the way she can act. I mean, sure, I believe she doesn't remember any of it, but still, it's... imagine for a second being in a mental asylum, especially I believe decades ago compared since they are vampires. Imagine how terrible this event would be mentally to anyone out there. And yet she acts the way she does. Now this character isn't as interesting to me as Carlisle, but it is commendable. But as I've said, should have been in better hands. Third character, Jasper, another character who I like solely because of his backstory. He was in the American Civil War. I believe he was a Union soldier. I could be wrong. Where he was attacked by 3 vampire girls of Mexican descent. Where they planned on using him and his knowledge to pretty much take over the other vampire covens to expand their food source. I'm going to just say right now that this character's backstory, as well as the next ones, could have been their own separate book. The Civil War and vampires are in it. In all honesty, I would love to see a movie of this, like this. I mean, I've seen like vampires during World War II, such as in the anime Hellsing, and I think I've seen other ones, but none of them come to mind right now. Like I said, could have been in better hands, but he actually could have had his own story. And the final one, Rosalie, also because of her backstory. She grew up, and she was, if I remember correctly, she was the most beautiful woman in this town. And she became jealous of her friend who had a kid, a beautiful child, and she herself wanted one. Well, it turns out that her fiance is a real big douchebag. Him and his friends brutally rape her, at which point she is saved by Carlisle, turned into a vampire, and exacts revenge on them, brutally killing them, but doesn't drink their blood. Also could have been its own standalone story. Should have been in better hands. In fact, the only problem I have with Twilight, other than the fact that it's poorly written, there's no character development, is that these characters' backstories are more interesting than the main story that we're forced to watch or read. It would be akin to if H.P. Lovecraft wrote Call of Cthulhu, and every event in the book was basically just him recounting himself writing the book, talking about what's happening in the book, but the main story itself is about his day-to-day life. Might have been interesting if you, like me, are a big H.P. Lovecraft fan, but you want to see Cthulhu rising out of the ocean. This giant squid head. Of course you want to see him. Why else wouldn't you? But, in all honesty, and to conclude, yes, Twilight it's not the greatest stories ever made, God no, and it certainly doesn't deserve its infamy or how famous it is. For me, I guess would be the word, I don't know. But still, even if you hate Twilight, I'm pretty sure even you yourself will have to admit it's not as bad as it could have been. Well, that's pretty much it. So long, YouTube, and thanks for all the fish.